All right, welcome everyone. Welcome back to special guest number two. Mark and I go back quite a way, actually. Probably about 10 years, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah, it might be more, mate. Might be 11 now.
Might,
If you haven't
might
got
be
to.
11 or 12. Yeah, yeah. And so we actually met. I mean, we met, you were a patient for a bit, and then we became
Mm.
good friends and stayed in touch over these years. And I've been super excited to see your journey and growth as now a very successful coach. But your story is quite interesting because you really changed industry and got into doing what you love. So I think it'll be great to hear, just for the guys that don't know you, a little bit about that journey, a little overview, and then we'd love to get into topics of mainly around fear and growth mindset tonight, if that's cool.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, so I'll do the whistle stop so we don't spend too much time on the
Yeah,
back. But
perfect.
my obsession was always sport, and football was my sport. That's the one I took the furthest and was, you know, driven all around the country playing football from a young age, and that's where my obsession with performance came as well, and competition, and um, that was amazing. Like I miss that. You can't find that camaraderie anywhere else really as we get older. But it was a really special time, and that took me to ultimately playing in America for a period. And then when playing football stopped, that competitiveness needed to go somewhere, and I chose sales. My dad had been in sales and been in the city, and his industry was media. He had an interesting story in himself where he had the idea behind trolley advertising, so way before all like tech and everything. So I grew up watching him go into London, and when I thought football wouldn't work out, that was always going to be the option for me. So into the city I went. I worked for some big organisations. Johnson and Johnson was the first place I really cut my teeth in sales, and going into hospitals. And as much as I've loved sport and performance, I've always loved science as well, and selfishly around how I can optimize my body. And it was fascinating going in and seeing how surgeons were using devices with patients to make them healthier. So I was selling them in the operating theatre, which was a strange experience. And then when that didn't feel like it was going to be quite as financially beneficial to stay there, I went to tech sales to a company called Salesforce, which are another global business, and yeah, worked there for a long time, and was in that typical sort of snake pit of selling and chasing money and status. And after a while, that game started to affect me. And I suppose again, the shortened version is work for a very, very long time on a particularly large deal, biggest deal that I'd ever worked on to date in sales in my career at that time, and went through a lot during that period, a lot of stress, some illness, fatigue, experienced mental health for the first time, really, that time as well. And deal closed, didn't feel any better. So the story that I told myself was, it's going to be worth it. You close the deal, you get the commission, yada, yada, yada. We all make these stories to try and make things and justify things that we don't want to do. And the pleasure that was anticipated after closing the deal and getting the commission, that never arrived. And that's when the penny dropped the first time. And from that moment on, I started to think about what I could do instead. I was sick of this revolving door of every year you get a new target, and you're constantly pegging yourself against other people in the office, which is bad culture, and not a particularly fulfilling way to live. And that's when I had the idea to start a podcast. When I played football in America, I'd listened to a lot of podcasts. I got on all the American hype, and actually loved it. I love all that stuff, clearly, as to what I do now. So I listened to a lot of podcasts and had this sort of, at the time, very strange idea and random idea to start my own. And that's where this journey began. So I left the corporate world sort of partway along that journey. And that's taken me down the road that I am now, where I coach athletes, work with elite sport teams, I coach business owners and founders, and work with high performing sales teams. And all of the work is around helping people to understand themselves, master what I call the inside game, so that they can navigate the inevitable challenges and difficulties and adversity that faces all of us as we go through this thing called life. and
Awesome.
yeah,
Cool.
that's a
So
short bit.
that's great. That's great. I mean, you've had it's not a lot of people. Not many people have had such a big transition. So that's really
Mm.
interesting. Obviously, I know
Also,
that
mate,
story, but
it's like
yeah,
I know we've only got a short amount of time, but I so
mm,
value our friendship because I met you when I was at J&J, and as a
yeah,
friend when I had not even started Take Flight, didn't even have ideas to create a
yeah,
podcast or to be a coach or to speak on stages or any of that. And you have observed, I'd say there's a very small amount of people, other than my wife, probably, and my brother and a couple of friends, and you are in that circle as well, of people who've literally seen the whole thing play out, which is amazing. I really
yeah,
value.
yeah. I appreciate that, and I'm happy to see the growth, mate, and what you're doing and inspiring others. And obviously, I heard you speak recently on fear, on a big, pretty big stage there with some great like scientific professionals in the audience, and you delivered an amazing 45-minute talk all about fear. So hopefully we can tap into that tonight. I
Yeah.
want to kick off, I suppose, a bit of a deep question. I know you're a deep guy and you're good with this stuff. So we'll go straight in. We're no mucking around.
Yeah.
One of we're running this performance coaching program, Doug and I, for some great trainers, physios, S&C coaches,
Yeah.
and when we start the program, we do a lot of work on vision, and that isn't just career vision, but it's how does your ideal life look? Um, what is your ideal clientele? What's your ideal day? Looking after yourself, time with family, etc. How do you create your ideal vision around work and life? Um, so I wanted to ask you, what would you recommend for someone to gain clarity in this area? And I'd love to hear, again, going back to your career, but also a big family life. You've had two kids and you've got an amazing family and a great wife. Like, how did you establish your vision?
Mm.
And sort of how do you recommend your clients embark on that process?
Yeah. Okay. Which one? Well, I suppose I can answer them both at the same time and draw on my experiences. So the thing is with thinking about a vision is we ask this question, right? How would I create a vision? How would I even know where to begin with that? And it's such a loaded question. It's very difficult to come up with something if you haven't thought about it before. And if
Mm,
you are, even if you are pushed to create a vision for yourself, it's very likely, if you haven't done the internal work and figured out who you are and what's important to you and what you value,
mm,
that you're going to create a vision based off of what you're seeing around you or based off of what you've perceived to be valuable to somebody else. That's what we do as human beings is we unconsciously we look to the outside world to tell us what's the right thing to do. And there's these there's a psychological concept called which explains that there's two innate learning systems. One's called conformist biased, which means that unconsciously we are naturally going to look to others and generally the masses, right, the ones that the majority are doing, and look to those behaviors as something that we should follow suit in and do the same because you know generations ago that was what would lead to our survival, and it's still unconsciously wired into us as human beings today. So that's one challenge. But once we become aware of that, we can go like, oh, okay, so I don't have to follow everyone else who's doing the 9 to 5 or everyone else who's doing that particular behavior or who has that belief. I can actually choose something that's more aligned with my truth. The other one is prestige bias. And prestige bias is that we would, or we do unconsciously again, look to people that appear to have prestige. So what that might have meant again generations ago was that the warrior who protected the township has prestige. He's actually done something of value. Therefore, unconsciously, we are perceiving him as someone who's prestigious, and we might then therefore look up to that person and mirror some of those things. Or the philosopher in the village, or the mayor of the town, whatever. But today, the issue is that when we're loaded with prestige bias, we're looking to people who have it's fake prestige, it's followers, it's likes, it's these fake profiles that we're looking at every day, and we're unconsciously basing what we believe to be valuable on that, right? So
mm,
that's the sort of framing. So taking all that away, you need to do the internal work. You need to understand who you are. And that's where I begin everything that I do with everyone. And that's I'm getting energized again now, but I've spent a long time this afternoon with the new clients, so it's been quite heavy today. But we do this work where we understand our belief systems and we question them, the things that are holding us back, our limiting beliefs, which is an overused term, but it's very important to understand. And then we recognize the things that have happened to us, the adaptations that we've made as a result of them, and where those adaptations are or aren't serving us. Once we've stripped all that stuff away and basically unlearned a lot of the bullshit, a lot of the unresolved trauma, then we can say, from a place of certainty of who we are, right now, what do I want?
Mm.
Now I've got certainty of myself. I know my purpose. I know my values. I know what's important to me. I know what I like and dislike. I know what I'm good at, what I'm bad at. Okay, now what do I want? And then that's where the vision comes in. And you can get as creative as you want because you've actually stripped back a lot of the limiting beliefs that would have been glass ceilings or what you might have thought you could have.
Yeah, yeah, really amazing actually. And we talk about purpose, but we probably didn't go into that deeper internal work, obviously, and it's something to really reflect on. And actually, particularly for those clients that we have that maybe don't have that clarity, like you say, it will happen a lot. Us three, we've done a lot of work on this ourselves, but when you have clients that have never explored it, how do you kind of take them through the process?
Yeah.
Mark,
For
can I
purpose.
just jump on something you're talking about there? Just going back to the prestige and kind of if you
Yeah.
can mirror that in some way to success. You talked about the likes and such. In your, it kind of makes me think about what a meaningful life is rather than success. And
Mm.
of course, that's kind of closely linked to vision, etc., and self-reflection. But in your thoughts, what's the difference between that success and that meaning, that meaningful life, then versus a successful life in your eyes?
Okay, so just to clarify the question, Doug, because
Hmm.
it's a big one. I just want to make sure that I'm going on the right lines. So, what's the difference between success and
Yeah, and
meaning?
I've got because basically people might view them as having a very big overlap, but you're saying from
Mm.
the inward out, that meaning versus the outward in. Someone might view someone as having success in life, but
Yeah.
how do you interpret the difference between someone interpreting them as having a successful life and a meaningful life, or is it the same thing?
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to clarify because if you've defined them in the right way, then they would
Hmm.
be the same. A sense of meaning would, if you're living a successful life, you would experience a sense of meaning. However, if you're placing meaning on the wrong things and searching for that, you're not going to feel. You might feel successful, but you won't have the feeling of
Yeah,
meaningfulness.
yeah, got you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Does
It
that make
does.
sense?
It does.
So I'd say to go a layer deeper on that as well. It's like we are. You guys will be well aware that we are meaning making machines. That's exactly what the brain is trying to do, and the reason why we suffer and are struggling to find a sense of meaning is because, again, in today's world, largely from tech. I don't want to be like Mr. Oh, with social media negativity because it's a great tool, but what's happened is the amount of information that we're receiving is vast, but the depth of the information is shallow.
Hmm.
So it's hard for our brains to understand it and have meaning in the stimulus that we're receiving. So we can't interpret it very well, which is why we're left confused and hypervigilant
Hmm.
generally. That's from a biological standpoint. So we need to go deeper with the information, and that helps us understand it and give meaning to the stimulus that we're receiving. And then philosophically, we choose to give meaning to things, anything that's valuable to us, simply by saying, what do I make it mean? And then choosing the answer, because a lot of it's unconscious. So if things have happened to us, negative things usually, or traumatic situations that we can then place a negative meaning on, that's going to cause us all sorts of suffering and discomfort. Success then for me is being able to define meaning in those situations on your
Right.
terms.
Yeah.
Nice. That's great. Say that one more time. That's really good.
success would be being able to define meaning in those moments, particularly the moments that have triggered by, past traumatic events
Mm.
that have left a mark, which are then dictating the way that you would think, feel, or behave in any given situation,
Right.
right?
Mm.
But when you
Yeah.
have the ability to step back and you can place meaning on that thing on your terms,
Mm.
that would be
Love that.
success.
Cool.
That's
Cool.
great.
Cool. Cool. Uh,
Just
Not sure that's how you meant
changing.
the
yeah.
question,
No. No.
Doug,
It
but
does. It's well,
You
yeah.
nailed it. Given you've had a long day. Taking a side step towards energy. So something that you and I have talked a lot about. We've both had periods of small amounts of burnout,
yeah,
overworking, pushing ourselves, and we've shared that a lot over the years. What when it comes to this topic of energy and focus, and I know this is another quite a big question, but what types of daily habit do you are really core to you maintaining a level of energy to look after yourself ultimately, to then be
yeah,
able to look after your family and then your clients? Like,
yeah. And then,
and I know this is the thing that we're always talking about
mm,
with balance, but what does your daily routine look like, and how do you sort of try to nail this area of energy management day to day?
this is what I ask you, isn't
Yeah.
it? So my answer to that is, so there's probably two sides to it. The first side is that not just from an energy perspective, but also from doing the work and my own like necessity for introspection and time with myself and stillness. Meditation is a non-negotiable, and there's so many different types of meditation, but the one that I subscribe to is TM, Transcendental Meditation, which I've practiced for probably 12, 13 years now. Not always
Yeah, as long
consistently.
as I've known you, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, not always consistently. Since I had kids, it's been harder, but interestingly, since the start of this year, I've done it every day for 30 minutes in the morning without fail. Um, and it just transforms the way that my day unfolds. So I do that, and then that leads into visualization, and I'm visualizing images mostly in as much detail as possible for the things that I want in my life, and I'm doing that after the meditation because the meditation is getting me into a calmer state, more parasympathetic, and a more suggestible state. Call it manifestation, whatever you want to call it. I just do it because I know that it's easier for me to attract that in that state. So I'll be visualizing the things I want, and then I will affirm it. So I'll write them down in a journal. I'll just write down, I easily and effortlessly attract the people, places, and opportunities that allow me to fulfill my highest potential, for example. Like,
Nice.
I write that one every day, which is why it rolls off the tongue so easy. But like whatever comes through in the visualization, then I'll just write down affirmations um, that that fit with that. And the reason why I talk about that when you're asking about energy is because that gives me and sets an intention for the day. So much of my energy, I know when I'm not doing that, is burned on being distracted, or not focusing on one thing at a time and like flicking from task to task. Whereas when I've done that, it's much easier to stay on track with what's mattering, and what matters to me is the things that I've been visualizing and the things that I'm trying to create and build in my life. Because it's all the thing about manifestation that gets a bit of a negative like view is that people think you sit there and you manifest, but
Mm.
it's not. It's simply, for me, it's setting an intention. You can talk about the energetic and universal laws, but it's setting an intention, and then I'm going to go and put them into practice immediately after and action them in the day. So that keeps me super focused. And then this is the one that we balance all the time. It's exercise, so training and managing my load. So with the energy, it's really about, like, even you were saying the other day, which has been really helpful, maybe dropping from the 3 sets to 2 sets per body part, or whatever we're doing, depending on how I'm feeling. And I
Yeah.
manage each day, but I don't train back to back days. I'll always have a gap in between. And then I've got the infrared sauna and the ice bath just behind me here. So then I'll do that. I'll do them both 3 times a week on different days. So I usually do the ice bath the day after I've trained, and I'll do the sauna 3 times during the
Nice.
week, just random times.
With your just quickly before we move on, with your visualization, does that vary each day? Like, do you have some key ones you go back to? Would you mind sharing any examples?
Yeah, of course. So it depends on like what I'm feeling. There are usually like core ones. Like right now, I'm visualizing having a published book in hand, like my first
Nice.
published book, like that sort of thing. Which
Cool.
is there's no urgency for me on that. I'm writing it at the minute when I find the time. Whether that happens this year, next year, or in 5 years, I know it will happen. I know that, and I visualize that happening. But I'm not like I'm detached. There's this law called the law of detachment. So I believe it's going to happen. I don't ask the how. I just know it will. And that's part of the action
Hmm.
because I'm writing it. But then it's also trusting that a publisher is going to find me at the right time, and that's all going to happen. And then the other ones, I'm visualizing a lot of being on stage in much bigger stages. So you were saying you saw me when I did the one at the Tate, and that was really fun. But like I want to be 10, 20, 100 times the size of that audience. So I visualize that, and I visualize being on the stage, the feeling and the sense of being there, the faces that are looking at me, and the impact that happens in people's lives as a result of that.
Nice.
But then again, I'm immediately going into, been writing my new talk this week. So it's coupled with the action. So visualizing it's in my mind. I got the feeling and the sensation, and I'm then writing the talk that is going to be on that stage as well. And then with energy, I'd specifically, a lot of it is I am vital. I have abundant energy. These are the things that I say a lot. So I do visualize myself in really good health, being very present with my kids and doing that as well. And that again is an intention set for when they walk through the door and I've got to change hats.
Can I just, before you carry on, Rob,
Class.
can I just ask you something, Mark? Presumably, your morning routine, I'm a big believer in this as well. Is that presumably it's something you coach others to try and practice as well as a good anchor? I suppose
Yeah.
what would be really useful,
Yeah.
because I'll use myself as an example, when I come to coach, because there's not an element of taboo, but it's kind of a bit more of a new agey kind of
Yeah.
strategy for a lot of people. And I often find if I get A type clients or patients that I think would really do well kind of practicing this, how do you find if you get
Yeah.
someone that's a little bit resistant maybe to start with the meditation, because obviously there's associations with meditation, journaling, visualization, how do you kind of ease someone that's maybe a bit more resistant to that into those practices?
Yeah. So it's like with anything, it's like a belief system's based on someone's evidence, right? So you just got to change their
Hmm.
evidence. So I would either use myself as evidence. I could say, look, this is something that's changed my life. I wouldn't suggest doing it or even waste your time talking about it if I didn't believe in it. So I could use myself, or I would do one with them so that they would feel that shift in state and that calmness that they probably haven't felt for a long time. So they'd experience it live with me, or I would like give them or offer them the opportunity to experience it themselves, but like massively lower the bar. So can you do 60 seconds of meditation tomorrow? That sort of experiment with that. Um, and also there's so many different ways. So if they're resistant, I'd also be questioning, well, what are you doing
Hmm.
here then? Why have you come to see me if you're resisting things that are going to help you change and be better? So you might want to tie it emotionally to a goal or a reason for
Cool.
change as well. You told me that you want to be more centered, more assertive, more, you know, uh, have more conviction in your life. Well, meditation is something that's going to allow you to have more, like a better mental resilience, better emotional capacity, and blah
Nice.
blah blah.
Cool.
All that stuff.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
tough love one. I would give them tough love.
Go on, Rob. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, no, I was thinking, um, really, we want to get our teeth into the two big topics that I think you're outstanding in. They're your real strengths: growth mindset and fear. Um, I think if Doug maybe gets into the growth stuff with you, and then I think as we finish and conclude, we can kind of get into the fear, which is
Scary stuff.
an awesome topic, and yeah, the scary stuff to finish with. Yeah, exactly, or the
Not
not
so
scary
scary
stuff,
stuff.
as Mark would say. Yeah.
All right, then. So, I mean, growth mindset is something I'm really passionate about. So, and of course,
Mhm.
a lot of it's all about embracing challenges. Um, I suppose maybe Mark, you could you give an example of the biggest challenge in your journey so far? Because you've obviously, I'm not as familiar as
Mm.
with your journey as Rob is, but um,
Yeah.
how did you adapt? Did you adopt a growth mindset? Was it something that you had to learn how to do?
Mm. Do you want personal or professional, Doug? You roll the dice on this one.
Uh, Go personal, if you don't mind sharing.
Okay. I'm very happy, yeah, really comfortable. So and this is actually the answer to the biggest challenge of my life for sure. So when I was 5 months old, me and my mum left the house that we were in at the time away from who was my biological dad or is my biological dad. And I never saw him or I didn't see him again for a very long time. So the the most difficult thing I've ever done was reconnect with him 3 years ago. So all of the material around fear, growth mindset has come directly off the back of that. It's not from studying things or reading things specifically, although I've done that as well. It's all a lived experience. So I went to meet my biological dad, and the so just remind me the question, Doug, so I'm answering it from the right perspective here. You wanted to know
Yeah,
how I my
yeah.
growth
So
mindset.
what you've gone that what your biggest challenge, one of your biggest challenges, obviously, and then how did you nurture a growth mindset to kind of overcome or deal
Yeah,
with it, maybe?
yeah. So there's these two predictors of behavior that I talk about a lot, right? So there's the first predictor of behavior is, well, technically the second predictor is a desire for pleasure, to feel pleasurable experiences. So that's based off of whatever people define as pleasure, because everyone has a different definition of what that is. And that's then going to direct our behavior towards things we believe are going to provide feelings of pleasure. The only one that outweighs that as a predictor of behavior is a need to avoid pain. So this incredibly powerful things for us to understand is that we're driven by either what we define as pleasurable, we're going to go towards those things, or we're going to move away from what we define as painful things. So when we look at the big decisions in our life, this is what they're based off of. And in this scenario for me, what happened was I avoided this my entire life because of the pain. So I ran away from that. It took something to happen in my life that would turn the sort of do a 180 on that and turn those things around. So it became more painful to avoid that scenario. And what that was my daughter being born, and I was seeing myself behaving in ways that I didn't want to behave and getting angry or not being able to manage myself and basically not being the father that I wanted to be. To feel or hear the calling that I had to face that part of myself if I really wanted to be that version of me who was the best dad, who was someone who I actually admired and respected, and would have wanted to be my dad essentially. I have to do the difficult thing. I have to face that part of myself. So, and it was so fucking difficult. But I say that as humbly as possible, that basically I wasn't particularly brave or had this growth mindset necessarily at the time. It was just more painful for me to remain the same and not face that and heal that part
Hmm.
of myself. Having said that, though, going through that process, going through that experience of meeting him, that's when the growth mindset arrived. Because all of my beliefs to that point, I believed that avoiding that was the best thing for me. And then I met him, and the illusion of the whole story that had driven such huge parts of my life shattered. The bubble burst because it was all fucking nonsense. It was all a story. It was all a
Hmm.
narrative. It was all a narrative. And in that moment, I realized everything that I'm afraid of is a story that I've created or someone's created for me, and I've decided to make it true. So hang on then. Maybe I can question all of those things. And that's what I do when I go on stage in front of hundreds of people. Still, you have the anticipatory rise naturally in your body, like biologically, but the stories that governed that I would have froze in, years gone by aren't there anymore. Because I can question them and say, like, actually, that's nonsense. And also, I've learned, which is a very real belief and my truth now, that if I face things that terrify me, I become unstoppable on the other side of it. And that's always been my goal in the first place. So do more. Yes, please, give me more. I'd go and do it again 100 times.
Oh, mate, thanks for sharing that. That's that. So, do you think growth mindset is something that you have to nurture as you go through? It's not something you just have. You have to kind of go through experiences in order to foster that. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to. It's like, public speaking is always a good example. You have to do it to get over the fear. You have to face the fear. You have to do it and probably be a bit
Hmm.
shit the
Yeah.
first time. I know I was. And I used to make myself, I'd literally be sick before, like days before, I'd feel really rough because I was so
Hmm.
nervous. And then you build your tolerance to that
Hmm.
experience.
Mhm.
You 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 acclimatize yourself to the fear essentially, and you rewire what that experience
Yeah.
means to you.
So maybe following on to that, a good time to ask this is how then, if you're working with someone, how do you help
Mm.
them to kind of see setbacks and big shit as a kind of a growth opportunity rather than a setback and, just catastrophic?
Yeah. Well, to initially, it's to understand that the thing that makes them feel like it's catastrophic is other people's opinions. It's not
Hmm.
them. So that's why public speaking is such a good example, because people are looking from the outside in, and you have this. You're almost paralyzed in fear because what they're thinking. Well, hang on a minute. Who fucking cares what they think? If you really are that aligned with your purpose and your reason for being here, then it's probably worth putting yourself out there a little bit. Maybe not doing it as well as you want to, but to improve personally, like you get to grow. So no one loses. You get to grow. They might benefit, they might not, but they will do if you keep trying and you get better
Yeah.
and better and better. So the two the two two sides of this is there's competence acquisition versus competence
Hmm.
validation. So competence validation is the obvious one. It's like, I choose to become better at this for you. I want to develop my level of competence for
Yeah.
prestige, for my ego, right? For somebody else's approval, for someone else's validation. Or competence acquisition is, I choose to become more competent at this and grow and become better at this, to acquire skills, to become better at this particular skill, become more talented at this thing, become better at this thing. So you either tune into one of two. You tune into, I'm going to do this thing for somebody else's approval, or I'm going to do this thing for my own benefit, my own growth.
Cool. And is there anything that, like, you talk about those big moments, those like talking on stage and things like that, the big learning opportunities? Is there anything that you can think of, like you get people to do daily, like daily habits to kind of try and promote a growth mindset, like mantras, or I don't know. Is there any tools in your toolbox there?
I think the ice bath's always
Yeah.
a great one. The psychological battle of jumping in the cold plunge or just having a cold shower, because it's never, no matter how many times you do it, it's never nice, and you learn to negotiate with yourself. But also, that's a physical one. But also, any form of discipline I think is good. Like, just lean into like, be honest with yourself. Are you putting something off? Are you skirting those things that you know you
Mhm.
should do? And just being honest with yourself and doing them. Like, it's, that's quite David Goggins esque, but you know, do the difficult things, like notice where you're skirting and avoiding things, because how you do one thing is how you
Yeah.
do everything. You're going to build a habit towards that way of being, versus recognize the things you're
Hmm.
avoiding, and leaning into them, and doing them for your own
Cool.
benefit.
Yeah. I think I personally think like normalizing discomfort is something that we can really promote in our kind of our fields. I think a lot of people can find that discomfort paralyzing, and to normalize that is
Yeah.
both mentally, psychologically, physically. I just think that's a really, I mean, like, you can call it grit, you can call it whatever you like. But again, David Gogginsy, but I
Mm.
think it's okay to kind of try and promote that stuff. Definitely.
Yeah, totally, Doug. And to, even to take that a step further, to tie it back into your previous question about meaning, is that studies have shown, and we don't even need the studies because we can feel it, is that you instantly get a sense of meaning from doing
Yeah.
the difficult things. You get out of the ice bath and you're like,
Yeah.
fucking yes, like that was, I'm so glad I did it. Or anything that's difficult, you feel euphoria because you've achieved something, you have grown, you've progressed, you've moved yourself along. And it's where people don't do that are lost and that losing that sense of meaning and or success, as you
Yeah.
said earlier.
Yeah. 100% agree. Right, go on, Rob. You talk about some scary stuff. We've done the growing.
Yeah, great. I mean, we're getting into your. I feel like you're the man talking about this at the moment, and it's great because I was really inspired by the talk you did the other day. And do I feel less fear in my day to day life? Maybe a little bit, but I could definitely hear you talk another 10 times on it, and I feel like every time I hear you talk on it, it helps me, um, because I think we all have deep rooted small subconscious fears, whatever you want to call them, about our future, money, our career, whatever it might be. So if we get into this topic, how how do we? This is a very open question, which I guess will just give you the springboard. How do we as coaches first? Because I believe we need to nail it ourselves before we can really coach it. I wouldn't coach how to overcome fear until I've mastered it.
Yeah.
So how do we as coaches and people overcome fear?
How do we as coaches and people overcome
Can I add
fear?
something? Just as maybe, do we
Please.
ever overcome fear? Is it something that we ever can?
Well, I'm just sort of thinking about where I take the question first, because obviously talk about it in so many ways, but so how do we overcome fear would be, so let's talk about when fear arises then.
Mm-hmm.
So when does fear typically come up in our lives? It's when it's when things are unfamiliar or uncertain.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think if we take our industry, yeah, because we're all coaching, we're doing different things, but we're all aligned. Everyone
Yeah.
listening, us three, we all have that question mark over the future, and I guess the fear comes from the unknown, and some of our coaches are trying to figure out their next steps and where they go, and that can be quite a daunting process.
Mm.
Um, so if we are I mean, obviously we can talk about life as well and get into personal life, but if we kind of thinking more around the sort of career progressions, fears around developing as a person and changing country, changing jobs, building a business. So these, these things that naturally bring fear.
Yeah.
How do we start to approach that?
So I suppose carrying on with that thought is like fear comes up when it's something that we're unfamiliar with or an environment that we're uncertain in. So somewhere along the line, we've learned that uncertainty isn't safe.
Mm.
So that's where it's important to do your own unique internal work. So there's roots to all of the stories that we believe and all of the narratives that we believe. And that is where our fears are born. So there's things that I'm scared of, Rob, that you're not scared of. Likewise, Doug, that we all have different fears, right? So why do we all have different fears? Why are we all born with different fears? Well, because we've had different experiences and we've learned those stories in different ways and we've internalized them in different ways. So the first thing I would say is you need to understand that about yourself. Like, where are those stories born? And that's some of the deep work, right? That's what I was saying about this afternoon when I've spent a long time with someone today. You're understanding the stories because the stories are dictating the way that you're reacting and responding in different situations, namely in situations with uncertainty. That's where fear crops up. And then the other thing is most of us are learning that the biochemistry or the biological response is a bad thing. So we all get the same sort of reaction. It can be defined as excitement or it can be defined as fear. Most of the time we define it as fear because it's different to how we feel when we're just doing normal things, watching TV or whatever. So the first thing would be question your stories, question your narratives. And one of the initial laws I always teach is that once we recognize fear is an illusion, which is what we were talking about earlier, then we can start to take a little bit more control back on the feelings that we've got. Now, it's challenging because I do diminish fear a lot when I talk about it to try and make it less scary. But it is real because it feels real to us. So that one of the other reasons why things like meditation, breath work, and those things are important is because that also allows you to have a biological handle on your response. So when you feel fear, you have the tools to calm your nervous system down, essentially. So that's a very literal thing. Like before I do a talk, I would do the same thing. Now, I'm having an anticipatory rise. Is that fear? No, it's excitement for me now. It used to be fear, but that tool helps me in both scenarios. So doing the breath work, I do single nostril breathing in each nostril. Self-talk, I talk to myself. I tell myself what the belief is. It might be helpful to talk about an example that I had a couple of weeks ago. Normally what I do is I do my nose breathing. I shake out a little bit as well, shake the energy off. That was one that Russell Kane told me about. He still says he gets so nervous before doing a stand-up that the energy is in his body is like so intense he has to jump up and shake around. And he actually very kindly invited me to one of his events, and I could see him behind the curtain before it came out, and he was literally like bouncing up and down like it was crazy. So I do a version of that, not quite as intense, but just sort of shake my arms and legs and shake my body, and that gets a lot of the built up energy out. And then the self-talk is really important because I noticed 3 weeks ago I did a talk and I'd been ill all day, so I hadn't eaten, and I probably shouldn't have done it, but I didn't want to let the guy down. He was an old client, and I'm speaking at the bigger event in the summer and all this sort of stuff. So I went and did it, and I noticed with no food in me, it was like so much harder. And I started getting these thoughts creep up, which I haven't had for a long time, which was fear. It was fear. And it's because I was the last person on the evening. I've been sat there for like 3 hours. I was starving, still feeling ropey. And like spontaneously during the evening, they'd called up a couple of other people in the audience who were coaches, who weren't meant to be the motivational speakers. And they got up and done really good jobs of like speaking just on the fly. I was like, fucking hell, I'm like the named motivational speaker here, and I'm following these guys. So it's the first time in a long time in my head, split second, but it did pop up. Was like, just fucking leave, mate. Just walk out. Just walk out and don't come back and don't do it. And one of my favorite talks on fear I did was with Conor Ben for the podcast, and he has this phrase which he says. Firstly, he has "fear is a lie" written on his neck, which I just love and very closely aligns to the philosophy we teach, which fear is an illusion. It's made up. It's a story. But he said you have an option, right? You can let the fear grow arms and legs, right? You have that thought, you can let it grow arms and legs, let it grow, or you can just kill it and stop it dead. And it is as simple as that. When you experience it that many times, you can recognize it and go, fucking, I'm not giving that any attention. You know, where attention goes, energy flows. So you have to have the awareness that the thought's there and just kill it. And what I choose to do then is I fill it with something else. So the self-talk I give myself, I feed myself. I say things like, you were born to do this. And I really feel that like you are born to do this. These are your messages to tell. These are your stories to tell. No one else can tell these stories. They happen to you. These are the lessons you learned off the back of it. It's your message. You can help these people. And then I sort of just freestyle from there, things that are affirming my reason for being there. And that makes the fear just get smaller and smaller and smaller. So they're things I would say. And then just continue to build evidence for the facts to fill your belief, right? Because that's really what's happening. When we look at the alchemy of what's happening there, we're moving fear into faith. Fear to faith. So from fear to, which is kind of like a version of self-doubt, to belief.
Awesome. If anyone has any questions, pop them in the chat box now. I'm conscious that we're getting towards the end here, Mark. So I just wanted to finish on this topic with one final question, and you've kind of just touched on it, so it's fresh.
Yeah.
For the listeners to take away a bit of a process that they can deal with fear, like a drill, or you're suggesting some self-taught visualization, breath work, a bunch of really great ideas. If we take a simple example that I think we've all had in different points of our life around fear of unknown future, like career-wise, like where we're going, what we're doing next, and that can fluctuate through life. But how would you suggest, like, sort of compartmentalizing a strategy for our coaches to work through a system of their own, that you've obviously trained your own system, and there has to be a degree of personal to it as well. But if you kind of give a bit of an overview on how someone would build their own system for combating fear, like you've built your own system.
Yeah, totally, man. I really appreciate that, because I talk about it, and even as I'm listening to myself saying it, like I recognize I've built that. It's just embedded. It's part of me, but everyone else can do it as well. So if there's fear about the future, like, you're creating the fear for yourself because you're not doing something. I really do believe it's as simple as that. So what are you not doing that's causing the fear? Where is there uncertainty? There's a lovely quote which says that the antidote to self-doubt is understanding. So whatever you're afraid of means that there's a lack of certainty there, or the lack of understanding. So go and understand a little bit more about it. If that means taking action towards it, or learning about it, or reading a book about it, or whatever that thing is that's causing you uncertainty or lack of understanding, which is leading to the fear, just address it. The last laws I talk about all the time with fear is like, when you face your deepest fear, you truly become yourself. But it's the same for any fear that you face. The more fears you face, the less power they hold over you, and the more that you embed these philosophies. And that's what's key, is that, I can sit here and say that fear is an illusion and all these things, but you've got to recognize when you're feeling fear, remind yourself, oh, I remember I was on that call, or I heard that talk, or I did that thing, and that guy said fear is an illusion. Okay, so the feeling I'm having now is an illusion. All right, fine. Well, it feels very real, but let me try that and see what happens. Push through it, force yourself, and it's going to feel horrible the first time. But that's your first step to building evidence and embedding it and creating a new system and a new approach for you to face fear. Because the reality is now, my fear is very different. My fear is not facing fear, if that even makes sense, right? My fear is to not do the difficult thing, to not see how far I can go, to not test myself to my fullest, which is why I do struggle with fatigue, because I constantly push myself to the edge, and you don't realize it's your edge until you get there. But my fears have shifted. It's like, well, if I don't face that thing, if I don't do that thing, then what? Fuck, I'm going to have an average life, and then I'll really be unhappy. So
can I just ask one question then? It can be a binary answer, or you can elaborate on it then quickly. Is, in your mind, Mark, is fear positive or negative?
Depends how you define it. You could say, I don't even really think about fear. It is just a feeling in my body that is telling me something. Now, I've chosen it to tell me that that's what I should do. That's somewhere I should go closer towards rather than further away now. So is it a good thing or a bad thing? It's bad if it stops you doing what you want to do. And it's good if it helps. It's a teacher. Yeah. It is simply as a teacher. So in that sense, it's fucking brilliant. I love it. It's my best friend. Give me more. I want to feel it as much as possible, because it's going to steer me in the direction of me figuring out what I'm capable of. And maybe that's not a belief system that's for everyone, but I'm a much more fulfilled human with far less suffering than I had before.
Cool. Yeah, I think just on that, going back to growth mindset, if you can teach, and I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do, if you can teach someone to reframe fear from that negative holding back force to a positive driver, it takes on a whole different guise, and it can be a really useful tool. I'm not saying it always is, because it can paralyze, but yeah, it's just interested to hear your thoughts.
Cool. Yeah, no, thanks, mate.
We've got one question from one of the coaches as well, Mark, and Matt has asked, and it fits with what we just said and what Doug's just said, actually, is fears they can be quite sensitive as a topic with our clientele. And they may not come to you and say, hey, Mark, I'm really scared about this lecture I'm doing in a month. Help me with that.
Yeah.
It might be much deeper and subtle, and you're actually realizing there's something there that they're avoiding talking about, you know, or they're alluding to something holding them back or some fears, but they maybe don't quite want to get into it, which is a reality. A lot of the time, that's going to be how it is. Any tricks for us? You know, we're not experts in this area. Any tricks or ideas for how we approach this tricky area with clients?
Yeah, this is a great question, because this is sort of what I built the middle body of my talk around, was really explaining what fear is and how it shows up to a degree where everyone can go, oh, I do experience fear, because we're conditioned to not show weakness or to not be vulnerable. So to say I'm afraid or experience fear is, you know, you can't do that, right? Because that's going to threaten my position in society or my status or something. So, I mean, it depends how much time you've got, right? But you could, a few things. Be vulnerable yourself. If you recognize that in someone, be vulnerable yourself. And generally the energy will be received and reciprocated. What you give, you receive back. So by being vulnerable, it's more likely that they're going to feel in a safe space to share as well. I'm sure with the clients, you got those relationships anyway. The other one is, I always say to coaches that questions are your answers. So the better questions that you ask in those scenarios, when you pick up on that intuitively, then asking really great questions to get a depth of awareness that they probably don't even have in themselves yet. And that's the powerful thing about these questions and about being a coach, is that you're asking these questions to help them even recognize it in themselves, because their story and their ego is so, in defense mode, they probably don't even see it in themselves, right? I'd probably say that's the first two, right? Show vulnerability yourself, and then to ask really great questions and give them the space to feel like they can even allow themselves to accept that. Then the second phase is, and to share it back with you, and potentially drawing on evidence or examples of where you might have helped people before that. Oh, okay, because then naturally, if you've helped someone with that, I experienced that, I better ask you for my thoughts on that as well.
Nice.
Brilliant.
You gonna ask the next question as well? Have you seen it?
I've asked that. Yeah, the visualization one. Yeah. So I don't think there's any more on there. Any more from you, Doug? Anything else you want to cover?
Really insightful.
No. We could stay here for 3 hours, but you've had already a massive day, so we should definitely let you go to sleep. Mark, massive thanks, mate. And it's been, again, I'm not joking. I could keep going because it just really energizes me, this stuff, and it's great to hear you talk about it. Take a lot from it, and hopefully the whole pack has enjoyed it. And yeah, we appreciate you.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, my pleasure.
Thanks.
My pleasure. Both of you. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Really cool.
Awesome. Cheers, everyone. See you soon. Take care. Bye.
Are we dropping off, mate? Is that it?